Hello, welcome to this edition of This is Politics. My name is Justice Malala. I'm with my partner in crime, Mondli Makanya, and we're going to be talking some serious politics today. Morning, Mondli. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Justice?
All is good. All is good. Well, there's a lot to talk about. You know, one of the things about what we do, meeting people, talking politics, is just how the week just charges up with so many topics. So I'd like you to tell me what we should talk about today. Not just talk about it, perhaps we can add some intelligence, a path forward for the people at home listening, watching, so that they can navigate the world. So what would you like to talk about today?
There is a big week coming up ahead. Next week is the National General Council of the ANC. And as we all know, it's always a game of high politics. It's supposed to be a session where the ANC does its midterm stock taking, but actually it becomes a battleground for succession, etc., etc. So that's coming up next week. So I think we should definitely talk about the NGC, and there are lots of controversies surrounding that, including a possible coup plot. That's definitely something that we should talk about.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that. Can I ask you something? One of the things that I find, I feel like we're not talking about this, but why do we talk about the ANC so much when the ANC is in a coalition government? The ANC's policies are just the ANC's policies, but it's got to take them to the GNU, and the GNU has to rubber stamp them if they're going to become policy. So although the ANC is at 40% and everyone is 20-something and so forth, it cannot not unilaterally, it cannot dictate policy. It's not the ANC of Thabo Mbeki and Mandela and Zuma, where the ANC said, we are going to nationalize the central bank. And then it's, well, if they say it, they've got 57% or 62% under Zuma, or 66% under Thabo Mbeki in 2004. They could do it. But now, should I care about the ANC's midterm stock taking, policy making? Should I?
We should definitely. The ANC, as you said, it's at 40% as per the last election, and the next big party is around 20%, that's the Democratic Alliance. And so the ANC is still the dominant political force in this country, and it still has a lot of control in many municipalities, in many provinces. So, I mean, it's still the political force in the country, a diminishing force. But still, at this particular point, we have to care what the ANC says, as much as we have to care what the Democratic Alliance says. I mean, the Democratic Alliance is going to go into its Congress next year around Easter time, and everybody will be looking to see basically what is the direction of the Democratic Alliance. And when the EFF goes into its Congress, or Jacob Zuma's party goes into its Congress, we should care, but we should care most about what the ANC what's going to happen with the ANC. And also precisely because the ANC's decline matters for what rises next, what comes after the ANC. So I just want to pose something to you. I mean, do you think that this NGC will be as dramatic as previous ones, or do you think that Cyril Ramaphosa pretty much has the things under control?
So that will be our second topic, the Zuma family and the charges in Russia. And then I'm going to think through your question and come back to you on that, Mondli Makanya. Now, what is the third topic you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think that we do need to talk about, like at this point, Donald Trump, the G20 is past us now. Donald Trump still has his guns aimed at South Africa. He took over the G20 on the 1st of December, and he has signaled that he's going to take a very different path from the one South Africa took. And he already has said that he doesn't want us there. Can he actually keep us out of the G20? All the deliberations that are going to happen throughout next year, and can he prevent President Cyril Ramaphosa from attending the G20 in Miami next year? So I'd like us to touch on Donald Trump. Unfortunately, we can't avoid that topic.
No, we can't. We can't. Okay, let's start. Let's start with the ANC NGC and whether there's coup plotting. So you asked me a question, Mondli, and I think it's a very serious question, is how is Ramaphosa in charge? I think for you and me reporting on politics the past 20, 30, 25, 30 years, I think the most significant of the NGCs was the 2005 NGC when Thabo Mbeki had fired Jacob Zuma. It was a very brave thing he did, that he, in June 2005, Thabo Mbeki said that the courts have found Schabir Shaik guilty of irregularly siphoning money into Jacob Zuma's pockets. And so Jacob Zuma has legal issues to deal with. A few months later, the NGC was held, and instead of it looking and reviewing policy, it said Thabo Mbeki had overreached. Jacob Zuma was given his powers back in the ANC as deputy president. They said, fine, you can fire him from cabinet because he serves at the pleasure of the president. But in the ANC, essentially a man accused of taking bribes from Schabir Shaik was given power back. And that is where people like Natim Tetwa, I think, emerged. He was the one who stood up and put forward that proposal, which was overwhelmingly backed by the KZN ANC. And that's where it changed, where the dynamic was, this is the conference, this is the platform where the next set of leaders, where the next set of ideas are played around with, and you start to get a sense of it.
It was, in effect, the forerunner to 2007.
Yes.
That's basically, it determined the direction for what would happen in Polokwane.
Yes. And so Thabo Mbeki was not in charge at that conference, and he was outplayed, outflanked by the Zuma faction, and it changed. I think Ramaphosa is in a different position now. If you look at the NEC of the ANC, I think it's still very much behind him. I think that the ANC is very aware that it doesn't have a deep bench. They don't have people say, you don't look at the second layer of ANC leaders of the Ramaphosa and say, you know what, Paul Mashatile can take over today and all will be hunky-dory. I don't see the ANC as ready to get rid of Ramaphosa. And I don't think the party knows quite what its future looks like. So I'm not convinced that this will be as dramatic an NGC as all that. Let me put it this way. I'll tell you what I'll be looking out for. I'll be looking out for something that's not about Cyril and those close to him. It's what those who are not comfortable with him might come up with, in that in how they say, we are not happy with the relationship with the DA in particular. And if they set fire to that relationship, then all of South Africa, all of us have to start saying, what is this? Because if you look at it, you have the GNU, you have uncertainty about policy that is broadcast by the business community. And every time that the GNU has looked shaky, the uncertainty index done by the Northwest University by Professor Parsons shoots up. It's like, oh, what's going to happen now? And when you have that kind of uncertainty, you have confidence slipping. And if confidence slips, then it's investors are, oh, should we be there? And the rand takes a beating and all those sorts of things. So it's not Cyril's position. It's whether a directive comes out that says, no, you need to review what we're doing with the GNU. Maybe you need to be talking to the EFF and so forth and so forth. Those are my thoughts, but I'm quite interested to hear yours.
No. I have to agree with you there. I think there were people, like over the past 2 years or so, who wanted the NGC to be a place where Cyril's presidency is challenged. And initially, it was people who were on the side of Paul Mashatile, who were trying to position Paul Mashatile as the next president of the ANC. And they were wanting to use the NGC as a test, kind of like of this, a test of the weakness of Ramaphosa and the strength of Mashatile, as a way of actually seeing whether Mashatile would be the person to take over in 2027. But I think over the past 2 years or so, the center of the ANC has pretty much held. And what has happened is that I think there's a sense that when I say we, I'm talking about them, that the ANC, the consensus of the ANC is that they should not be removing Ramaphosa before the end of his ANC term, and probably not the end of his term as president of the country. So in as much as there have been lots of reports about a coup plot being tabled at the NGC, I think that's pretty much been killed now. And
but I ask you, he behaved very oddly, that guy. Because he, in his political summation at the end of an NEC, he reads from his speech that I know there are some here who want me to go and confront me, come at me if you want me to resign. And it was it necessary? Who are these people?
No, I think it was for him, for his own political survival. I think it was absolutely necessary that he does so. He's not a very decisive character, but I think he was told that the snake that is there in the ground, it's in the hole, and the moment it comes out of the hole and it bites you on the ankle, you may not be able to recover from it. So tell the snake to come out now so that you can beat it, so that we can beat it for you. And I think that's what it did. I think he basically, ahead of the NGC, he basically went out and he basically dared the snake to come out of the hole. And I think the snake has retreated now. So the people who were mentioned as the lead actors in this coup plot were a person called Mondli Gungubele, who we shall from here on refer to simply as Gungubele.
Okay.
and Joe Patla, who is the Deputy Minister of Health.
And Mondli Gungubele is the Deputy
Minister of Communications.
Yes.
And they were both people who were demoted when the GNU happened, and they were made to be deputy ministers. And there were people who were enjoying their extensive luxuries as full ministers and now found themselves basically as juniors.
So, give me a big thought on this, Mondli. Mondli Gungubele was one of the people.
Can we refer to him as Gungubele?
Mondli Gungubele. Yes, Gungubele was one of the key, one of the key people in the Ramaphosa faction, if you'll call it that. So, in the run-up to 2017 ANC conference, Jacob Zuma had alienated a lot of people. Mondli Gungubele was one of the few people who stood up against him, spoke publicly and said, this person is taking the ANC down a very bad path and so forth. I find it extraordinary that here we are, 2025, 7-8 years later. Mondli Gungubele, who was a key part of the Ramaphosa train, who went on to get into Ramaphosa's cabinet, who became essentially minister in the presidency, in charge of intelligence, communications. I think at some point he had 4 or 5 portfolios. And suddenly he's the, to use your analogy, the snake. Does that mean that the Zuma, the RET faction is so completely destroyed in the ANC that you now have a new faction that split off from the Ramaphosa faction, as it were? What's happened to the Zuma faction? Can we say Ramaphosa's won?
Lord, I think that the Zuma faction of the ANC is totally gone. I think the last conference of the ANC basically signaled the total annihilation of the Zuma faction. There is no longer an RET faction of the ANC. And if you look at some of the strong supporters of Ramaphosa right now, it would be people who would have been considered part of that faction. I think among the key defenders are people who are in the top 7. I mean, Nomvula Mokonyane is not necessarily a Ramaphosaite, if you can name it that. But you know what? She's loyal to the ANC and she's loyal to the leader of the ANC. And secondly, and if you think of people like the former Premier of the Northwest, Supra is today just a functionary in Parliament. He is a powerful chairperson of a committee, and he is not gonna shake up things. He's serving his party and serving his pocket and his position, and so on and so on. The most virulent supporters of Jacob Zuma have left, and they have joined his party, and that's where they now reside. They are in that party. So that is dead, and the factions that exist are in. I think that there is an insignificance in the factions that now exist. I don't think these two leaders.
Gungubele and Pasa.
Gungubele and Pasa, if they were to lead a rebellion against Ramaphosa, I actually do not think that it would be a successful rebellion. They are not powerful figures enough. Unless one were to assume that they are being used by, let's say, people aligned to Mashatile who are trying to test the waters around whether Ramaphosa is challengeable. But even, I think, at this point, Mashatile is quite happy to sit back and wait for the 2027 ANC conference, where he will then make his charge for power.
Wow. I never thought I'd say this. So Cyril Ramaphosa actually, with all the problems that the ANC has gone through, has actually become master and commander of the ANC. He's taken out Jacob Zuma's faction. They're outside of the ANC if they They are not in the ANC anymore at the price, at the cost, because he's got from 57% to 40% of the electoral vote. But still, the ANC is done with Jacob Zuma.
Oh, I mean, like, that's done. I think if one were to put it simply, we can say that Ramaphosa won that fight. But to use a lovely English word, it was a Pyrrhic victory because he's lost a lot of political power in terms of the presidency of the republic. I don't think that he enjoys as much power as Jacob Zuma or Thabo Mbeki or Nelson Mandela or even Kgalema Motlanthe enjoyed when they were in the union buildings. So, but I mean, like, you know what? In a way, he did. And people used to praise him for playing the long game. He played the long game, and eventually he did assume total command of the African National Congress. But in the process of playing the long game, he dissipated his own political power, and he stopped himself from making big decisions for the country. And that cost the country a lot.
Okay, can we talk about the Jacob Zuma family then? I want to talk about the Jacob Zuma family. Can I start?
The most dramatic family in South Africa.
I don't know if you followed the story, but essentially back in September, October, families of about 18, 17 in by some accounts, a little bit more, young men between the ages of 21 and 39 start receiving WhatsApp messages saying, "Hey, we've arrived. We are in Russia. It looks like they're putting us on trucks. It looks like we're going to the front line." So you could be Mondli, you could be Duncan, you could be Malala. You're sitting there and your cousin or your nephew is sending you these messages. And as a family, you thought, they're going to get bodyguard training. That's what they were told, to become elite bodyguards for the leadership of the MK party. The deal was done with Duduzile Zuma Sambudla. It was done with a woman who is reported to be a wife or a partner of Jacob Zuma's, and a man called Blessing Khoza, who the three of them accompanied these young people to Russia, had them sign papers, and the guys and left them there. And suddenly the guys are saying, "Please help us. We don't want to go to war. We thought we were coming for training." Jacob Zuma, according to the Sunday Times and the Times, went to Moscow to try and meet Vladimir Putin and the Minister of Defense of Russia. Now, you'll remember and I'd like you to talk to me about this a bit more, Mondli. The relationship between Russia and Jacob Zuma is long. He's gone there for medical help, all kinds of other trips he's made to Russia. And so he is blue-ticked. Putin doesn't see him. The Minister of Defense doesn't see him. But he writes letters to them. They say to him, "Balingwati, Baba, Balingwati," and we'll listen to you. So he writes the letters and he says, "Look, these kids are from prominent South African families. Don't send them to the front line. Let them come home." Because they were there specifically for advanced military training. Now, this is why I want to talk about this. There are two things, okay? My view is that the first thing is that if you're South African, back in 1998, Mondli, you and I were working as political reporters at the time. back at the time, I think it was Kada Asmal who pushed for it. He was very enthusiastic. Kada Asmal and maybe can't remember the other minister, but they said, we are tired of all these South Africans, because remember, South Africans who'd fought in the Angola, Kutokwana Valley and lost and were going off to the Seychelles, wherever. There's a coup here. There were lots of South African mercenaries all over this continent. Big, huge.
No, we were creme de la creme of the mercenary world.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So they said no more South Africans fighting. So they've passed the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act of 1998. It's very explicit. I'll read you what it says. No person may within the Republic or elsewhere recruit, use, or train persons for, or finance, or engage in mercenary activity. You don't do that. You don't take money to take kids to Russia. You don't pay kids to fight for an army elsewhere. If you do it, you have to get permission from South Africa saying, I want to go and fight in this place. You don't just do it. And we basically don't give permission to do that. So that's the first thing. So if Duduzile Zuma Sambutla has taken those young people, and the families are claiming, and her own half-sister is claiming, that they took those kids, young people, young men of fighting age, to Russia to fight, then not just her and the two others, Sipokazi Zuma and Blessing Khoza, they should be charged under the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act. They should be charged, and they should go to court, and the law should take its course. But the thing I want to talk about, Mondli, that really has got me very worried are these letters that Zuma wrote, in which he says these 17 should be handed back to South Africa because they were sent with a singular purpose, I'm quoting, to receive advanced military training. Hello?
Exactly.
Why is a party... help me here. Why is a party in a free, democratic South Africa, a party that can, I can turn around now and say, Duncan, vote for me. I've registered a party, okay? And Duncan can vote for me. And why in a free South Africa is someone sending soldiers to a foreign country to train?
And this is a political party that is represented in the Parliament of South Africa. It is in several legislatures. It participated in the election. It makes use of all the avenues of exercising influence in this country.
It's 15%. It's got 49% in KZN.
It's almost 50%.
Exactly.
Yeah, almost. I mean, like
it could run the government of KwaZulu-Natal.
Exactly. And most likely next year it will be running some metros. It will be an even more influential force in this country. Now you ask yourself, why is that party interested in training people in military activity? Now the objection that they have, that Jacob Zuma and his daughter have to what the Russians have done, is that these guys were sent to the front lines to fight in the war with the Ukraine. It's not about the fact that they do not see the wrongness of the fact that you send people to go and get advanced military training in a foreign country to come back and do what?
This is the question. To come back and do what in a peaceful South Africa, and you send people for advanced military training. And I think this is a point where if we have an intelligence service in this country, it should by now be telling me that justice, it should be telling the president of this country, it should be telling the security structures that it looks like someone is starting an army in South Africa. And if it looks like an army, because this looks like you're starting an army, it smells like you're starting an army. And you know what? He is starting an army. Why is Jacob Zuma
Let
starting
us not forget that while Jacob Zuma was president, he established a unit within the State Security Agency that reported directly to him. And that agency, the people who peopled that agency, the personnel in that special unit, actually were sent to where? Russia to be trained by the elite of the Russian intelligence services. And they came back to South Africa and they were working for Jacob Zuma, not for the Republic of South Africa. They were working for Jacob Zuma. So let's not forget. So that is the history of Jacob Zuma. His own personal, the personal army thing is something that actually matters to him. And let's also not forget that Jacob Zuma just a few weeks ago went off to Burkina Faso to go and pay homage and have deep talks with the military leader of that country, who is somebody who's also basically an agent of the Russians. We have to be honest about it. That's what Traore effectively is. I mean, like, it's not as if the Russians are the only people who have agents in the highest echelons of power. I mean, like, if all the big powers do. But I mean, like, there's a very bizarre alliance that is being created.
So we need answers, Mondli. We need answers from Jacob Zuma and his party about why exactly a party in a free state is starting an army, sending young men of fighting age to get advanced military training. Because by his own words, Jacob Zuma says this: these young men were sent to get advanced military training in a free South Africa, where I can cast my votes, I can lobby, I can put my issues forward. And
with his daughter at the center of the recruitment.
And a partner of his also implicated. So I think those are the key issues about this story. It troubles me deeply, Mondli. It troubles me deeply that the same daughter of Jacob Zuma's, the same MP of MK Party, is also at the moment facing charges of inciting the July 2021 riots. Now, for our listeners out there, I want us to go back to that time and remember this. 352 South Africans died in the riots in July 2021. 352 people lost their lives. Thousands were injured. The economy lost more than 50 billion rand. In a country with 32% unemployment, people were incited, were told, go and burn, go and loot, go and destroy. That is all that was done.
Shut down the most important highway in this
main
country.
line to get things in and out of South Africa down to the Durban port. That was shut down violently by people that we still haven't convicted in many instances. So when we talk about these things, this is the key thing. This is the kind of thing that could destroy this country. And I hope, for all our sakes, that the security cluster is actually doing its job, that it actually has been revamped, that it actually works. Because otherwise, I'm on edge. And I think all of us should be on edge.
The positive part of it is that the Hawks have jumped onto it and they are now acting against people who are involved in this. But on the negative side, why did it have to take media exposure for our security services to become aware that something like this had happened?
It's also, one day we'll talk about this, Mondli. Who are our friends? We are, President Ramaphosa has said we are friends and allies of Russia and so forth. It continues to...
No, we are non-aligned.
We are non-aligned. I apologize.
Yes, that is the lingo.
I see. So it continues to bamboozle me, to befuddle me, to oppress me even, that our friends to whom we are, positive, nonchalantly take on 17, 18 young people to train them in advanced military training without saying, oh, but we've got a nation-to-nation agreement with South Africa in which we take soldiers of South Africa and help them with such and such training.
No, we do joint exercises
Yes,
with the Russian army.
Exactly. Yeah. So why are we doing extracurricular activities now? I'm surprised by this. So we'll talk about that one of these days when we have the time. Do you want to talk about Donald Trump and the latest in a long list of insults, actions, grievances that he's expressed against South Africa?
Yeah, no. Look, we spoke about this before the G20, about the fact that the man just has this singular obsession with this country on the southern tip of this continent, and at every point finds a way of inserting South Africa into basically demonizing this country as one of the worst places on earth. I mean, he uses the word slaughter of white people. I mean, so that's what we do in this country. We slaughter people. We slaughter white people. And this white people cannot walk the streets of South Africa. And white lands are being grabbed left, right, and center. And I mean, the word genocide, for them to use the word genocide, and that to claim that genocide is being perpetrated in this country. I mean, that's what Donald Trump has done. And so he upped the ante by obviously not attending the G20 and pulling the US out of the G20. And post the G20, he has said that South Africa will not be invited to the G20, which will be held in Miami, in Florida, at his own Gulf estate. I mean, there's been quite a bit of commentary about whether you can actually disinvite a member of the G20. It's not his decision. It's not the decision of the host to say, no, we don't want that other person. There are other powers in the world that will, obviously, if he says that he's not going to invite South Africa there, the other powers will speak out and say, no, you have no right to do so. And I think that's going to be the test of what other world leaders and what the other governments are able to do to stand up to what Trump believes is his unbridled power.
When I look around, I see the Canadian Prime Minister, Carney. I see Keir Starmer in the UK, Macron. They all said some very nice things about South Africa and its hosting and its agenda for the G20. Modi from India, all these people said some really...
Everybody has been raving about what...
Exactly.
Yeah.
In South Africa, we had a huge mood of, wow, this is fantastic. We did something good with all our our problems and the fact that all of us were fully aware that the streets outside our studio were clean because we had visitors, and that our mayor and his cohort would not be as enthusiastic this week to clean up as they were last week when we had visitors coming. So with all that, everyone said this was fantastic and so forth. But I'm very aware that there are people who will say all these nice things the next day. It's like in South Africa, the Springboks annihilate, what was it, Ireland?
It was Wales.
Wales, and everyone.
They conquered Europe.
They've conquered Europe, okay? And we're all happy and we're all And then you come back home and it's, oh yeah, someone like Trump says there's a genocide. A genocide, as you said, slaughter. Those are words that the President of the United States has used. A slaughter. You know a slaughter, what that is.
When you slaughter, you cut the neck.
So we must be clear. These are lies. This is not, oh, he made a mistake. He is lying from the most powerful office in the world.
Not only that, the most powerful office in the world that has an embassy, a huge building in Pretoria with lots of people, and that has a huge consulate in Johannesburg, a consulate in Durban, a consulate in Cape Town. So there are American diplomats based in South Africa and probably lots of CIA agents, etc., and they know.
Yeah.
If there was a slaughter, they would be able to report correctly to the U.S. government, and I believe that they have done so. They've told the U.S. State Department and the White House that there is no such thing, but Trump and his cabinet continue to believe and assert that there is a genocide happening in South Africa.
So is there a conversation possible in this where you're dealing with this misinformation, disinformation, absolute outright lying? I don't know how you have a rational conversation.
You know, unfortunately, the U.S. is the most powerful nation on earth. I mean, like, economically, militarily, politically. You cannot cut ties. You cannot stop conversing with the United States. So we need to keep just talking and talking and talking and correcting where the lies are told. But I think we must just accept that the next 3 years are going to be a rough ride for South Africa. We're going to be in this space. I think our keeping of open communication is basically aimed at the fact that there are 200 or 300 million Americans, and we're talking to the whole country and not just to the center of political power.
So why haven't you appointed an ambassador after Prime Rasool left, if we really want to talk? I'm amazed that South Africa received so much support from African Americans, from progressive Americans, from Democrats across the board. Aren't those the people we should be speaking to as South Africa, saying, okay, that we get taking the hits, but this is the true situation. If you have a platform in the United States of America, use your platform. Here are the things. How can we be doing that when, one, our embassy, our consulate is leaking in Washington, D.C., and we don't have a spokesperson?
We spoke about Cyril Ramaphosa having won the war in the ANC, but after playing a very long game and being very indecisive for a very long time, and eventually he managed to outflank his opponents. So I think, a short answer to your question about why we have not appointed an ambassador is because we have a president who is very decisive at being indecisive.
Well, that's where we're going to end it. This podcast is not just talk, it is the intelligence you need to navigate the ups and downs of South Africa's fast-moving political landscape. This is Politics. Thank you for joining us today. It's me, Justice Malala, and Montli Makanya in the hot seat. As always, goodbye.